Hey everyone, how's it going? Delrith here, bringing you another rapid fire style review, this time for Starlink Battle for Atlas. Starlink is an action-adventure space sandbox game developed by Ubisoft Toronto. Starlink's story is very easy to follow. You're a part of a super diverse team known as Starlink, venturing into the Atlas solar system and plunged into a war with an enemy known as the Legion that you didn't ask for because the main villain is just honestly kind of an asshole. Your job and purpose becomes to build up a resistance, take back planets, and eventually kill the evil bad guy. Let me say straight off, I was told to go into this game putting my adult thinking to the side and try to see this for what it is, a game geared at a younger audience. This means that I wouldn't cringe too hard at jokes geared for younger people, and I'd try to see it from a perspective a teenager would during my playthrough. I was told that this would curb a lot of the issues that adult me would see through my play, but unfortunately that was not entirely the case. Before I start tearing into the issues with the game, I'm going to give it credit for what it does right. Graphically, Starlink is solid and looks fantastic, at least on the PS4 Pro, and it didn't disappoint me in the slightest being only on the consoles. Every planet of the 7 was completely unique, vibrant, and had great design. I enjoyed exploring them and never really got bored with the environments as I played through the game. Weapon effects and explosion effects were also great, all of the different elements and explosion types being represented well in a visual aspect. The voice acting throughout is done well. The characters' lines are obviously geared towards younger people, and I'm entirely alright with that. They all had solid personalities, and I didn't find any single character to be too over the top or out of place for the universe they set up.
I'll go find help.
Be careful. We don't know what's out there.
I'll tell you one thing that's out there. A bunch of killer robots.
Killer robots? We've seen
So
what,
fast!
Drakes and a couple of Cyclopses?
Hold up. What, wait, this is normal to you people?
In fact, all audio in the game in general is spot on. Everything gave good feedback, especially enemy deaths, and overall I'd say it was definitely a strong point of Starlink. In all technical aspects too, the game performs great. I was getting decent FPS throughout my experience, and I never once had any glitches, crashes, or save corruptions of any sort. Never encountered a single bug at all, and in this day and age, that's especially rare considering it's an Ubisoft title. There weren't even any animation glitches to speak of, which was absolutely mind-blowing. There's also a local-only co-op, which is a nice feature that's normally not in games these days, and I could totally appreciate that. That's pretty much all the praise I could give the game. Everything else, in my opinion, either fell into the extremely average category or even below average in some situations, and the real situation with Starlink is that outside the visuals, it feels incredibly simplistic and shallow. You equip your ship with about a dozen or so different weapons that you get through either buying the digital deluxe edition for $80, which gives you everything, buying toys, or getting them extremely slowly in-game, each of these weapons with various elements that are strong against enemies of the opposite type. This rock-paper-scissors mentality persists throughout and really is the only tactic you'll ever consistently use. Space combat also suffers from the same lack of depth. Ships can be swapped out, with each ship having sort of a focus like maneuverability, tanking, or utility, but that never really feels like a mandatory mechanic. I think through most of the game I stuck with the same one or two ships, only swapping to the others when I died multiple times in a row. Both ships and weapons can also be modded, these mods doing very simplistic things like increasing fire rate, damage, etc. And these mods are earned through killing bad guys and completing tasks found on every planet. Weapons and ships will need to be leveled up too, through use to get skill points to put into your pilots, allowing them to specialize in certain roles and give generic bonuses to every other pilot in your arsenal. Each pilot can re-level ships and weapons you've already leveled on other pilots, so at least you don't have to worry about running out of skill points or being forced into using weapons you haven't used already. The toys themselves seem completely and utterly pointless, and honestly kind of a detriment to the enjoyability of the game if you use them. The swapping mechanic feels clunky as is, and I can only imagine that having multiple ships, toys, pilots, and weapons would compound the issue to insane degrees if you were using them while you tried to play Starlink. Plus, if you don't buy the digital pack to get everything in the game, you're going to be spending upwards of $150 on physical toys just to get the equipment, and that's not something I'll ever see as an option. I guess the best way to put it is that Starlink feels designed around making you either buy toys or buy everything digitally. Progression of unlocking ships and weapons normally throughout missions is incredibly slow, leaving you for large chunks of Starlink with a handful of weapons and fighting in situations where you don't have the correct element. I personally don't think I would have been able to tolerate going through the game without having everything at the start, and that's a major issue. I would not buy the toys, period. It feels dated and rather poorly thought out as far as progression. The entire design of the system just feels super greedy, and I don't like it in the slightest. And oh yeah, as a side note, if you do have the physical toys, they don't store any data on them. So if you go play at a friend's house for the local co-op or anything, all your progress and perks and everything are left at the system at home. Mission structure and general gameplay is extremely repetitive in Starlink. Every mission can be summarized down to go here, fetch this, go here, scan this, or go here and kill bad guys. There's no real twist or complexity to it. Every outpost or building you rescue will have you doing the same things, and this persists through all 7 planets in the game's galaxy. It really doesn't complement the unique biome of each planet, and eventually starts to feel like an utter chore as you play. Traveling between planets initially sucks, with the controls feeling really clunky in space and there being constant slowdowns with pirates and the Legion attempting to pull you out of hyperspace when you're just trying to mind your own damn business. Oh no, oh no! I hate that mechanic. Personally, I tried my best to avoid ever going into space past the initial requirements, as fast travel thankfully existed and allowed me to avoid it. Space combat definitely isn't a strong point in Starlink, and if you're expecting intense and elaborate space gameplay, you're going to be sorely disappointed. There's also a distinct lack of enemy types in Starlink. Most enemies are either smaller or bigger versions of themselves with elements added and never really develop into anything complex beyond that. Bosses, as well, are extremely underwhelming. I think in total there are only 3 actual bosses, with one of them being a ship gauntlet, so it doesn't count. And aside from the final boss, they're pretty much the same throughout the entire playthrough.
I think it's trying to escape. We don't want to lose track of it. You'd better follow.
Oh boy!
Underside looks exposed. Quick, shoot the midsection.
Blah 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 blah. Wow, what a boss fight! Shoot a weak spot, damage boss, boss does next phase, shoot weak spot, so on and so forth, with little to no deviation in that design. Hell, they're not even the slightest bit difficult from what I experienced, the final boss actually dying in less than a minute in his final form, literally being one-shot by me. And finally, one of the worst problems, the story in total, mission-wise, only lasted about 2 hours. What I mean by this is that unique gameplay and missions, you know, scripted missions, only amounted to about 2 hours including cutscenes. There's almost nothing here. It's better than No Man's Sky, don't get me wrong, but outside of that, it's almost non-existent. It's just rinse and repeat tasks that you've already been doing throughout your entire playthrough of Starlink without any major development of plot, character arcs, or anything such like that, leading to a massive letdown final series of events and then an endgame mode where you do what you were doing before, but indefinitely.
I'll find them.
Thanks. I probably shouldn't have put a trainee on active field duty. They're brave, though, and they've got you to help them.
I'm just an errand boy. What do I know? I guess if I had any suggestions for how the sequel to Starlink, if there is one, could be improved upon, it'd be try to make the shallow puddle of game mechanics that are Starlink's core issues at least about as deep as a lake. Everything just feels so simple, so average, and honestly at times underwhelming. It's carried entirely by the vibrant colors, visuals, and I guess even relief that it's not as bad as No Man's Sky was at launch to me. It may not have much, but hell, at least it has a story and actual personality behind it. With everything in mind, I'm going to end up at a 5 out of 10, an incredibly average rating. There's no better way to describe Starlink than meh. It's not a great game, but it's not awful, and that's just how it is. I would have liked to give it a 6, but the entire toy mentality and near forcing of people to buy the $80 digital version really drove it down. There was just too little here to be sold in the first place, and it really stands out in the case of Starlink. Anyway, that's going to be it for this rapid fire style review. If you liked it, do me a solid and hit that like button, and if you're already subscribed, ring that bell to get notifications on new videos in the future. Thanks for watching, and until the next review, this is Delrith, and I'll be seeing ya. Whee! Okay, that's pretty cool. Gotta give it up.